From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. It's great to be with all y'all this morning, Thursday, January 9th, 2025. Can you believe it? 9 days into the new year, and a lot to talk about this morning, including that Cyberhaven breach that you just saw right in front of you. Jaime Blasco, the CTO and co-founder of Another Security, will join the show in a little bit to talk more about what happened to Cyberhaven and what can practitioners do to mitigate the risks of extensions on browsers, which are, kind of increasing as we go about it. But today's show is all about taking something out back and smashing it with a hammer. So we're going to get right into that here in just a moment. Before we do, make sure to follow us, subscribe, like, comment below. Let me know what you're drinking this morning. Also, let me know where you're tuning in from. And coffee cup cheers, y'all. Brilliant. So if you enjoy punishment, then you still must be an Ivanti customer at this point, because there's no good reason on why on earth you would still have a product that has more 0 days than food chemicals. Just saying. Like, Ivanti is now warning that attackers have again exploited a Connect secure remote code execution vulnerability tracked the CVE 2025-0282. Ivanti does not miss a day to have a 0 day at all. Like, at this point, someone should take all the Ivanti stuff out back and just smash it. And if you don't believe me, the image on our YouTube thumbnail for today's episode will let you will describe the feelings of what I think most IT and security people that have to deal with Ivanti products, who can't, for some godforsaken reason why, can't replace them, are dealing with. So another 0 day for Ivanti. This one is a critical stack-based buffer overflow bug in the Ivanti Connect Secure before version 22.7 R2.5. It's got a 9.0 CVSS rating. Ivanti Policy Secure before version 22.7 R1.2, and Ivanti Neurons for Zero Trust Gateways, ZTA, before version 22.7 R2.3. That allows an unauthenticated attacker to remotely execute code on devices. Ivanti is saying there is a limited number of customers which have been exploited at the time of disclosure. A limited amount of customers. How do you still have customers? I mean, honestly speaking, how does Ivanti still have customers? In what world is this acceptable that a security vendor has more 0 days than, on this show, literally, we will do a searching after this show to find out how many times I've talked about an Ivanti 0 day on the show. A bunch. Look up the KEF catalog. They may have more 0 days than anyone else out there, and that includes Microsoft, which has a whole bunch, right? So either way, Ivanti has said that the patch won't be ready until January 21st. They are working on some mitigation, and Ivanti is working with Mandy and Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center to investigate the attacks. We'll get more information as that information becomes available, but I'm going to give you a better one. Don't wait for mitigation. Don't wait for patching. Rip it, take it out back with a hammer, or any sort of violent thing that you enjoy hitting something with: a baseball bat, a hammer, a metal stick, whatever it is. Just smash it. You've done yourself a favor. That pretty much solves the Ivanti problem there. So there's that. Palo Alto, for their end, are now announcing patches for multiple vulnerabilities in their Expedition migration tool, which they kind of stopped doing patches on it. The Expedition tool was retired on December 31st. However, there's still some vulnerabilities that exist there, and Palo Alto decided to go ahead and take care of that. That's CVE 2025-0103. So if you are using this tool or looking to use this tool to migrate your firewall's policies, that's essentially what this tool does. You want to make sure you get that patched up. SonicWall, for their end, are also emailing customers, urging them to upgrade their firewall Sonic OS firmware to patch an authentication bypass vulnerability in the SSL VPN and SSH management that is susceptible to actual exploitation. In an email sent to SonicWall customers and shared on Reddit, the firewall vendor says The patches were available as of yesterday, and all impacted customers should install them immediately to prevent exploitation. And whenever a vendor says to prevent exploitation, it means it's already being exploited. That's how they discovered the issue, and they're asking everyone to do it because just go on Shodan, look up the SonicWall customers, and then go to town. That's how threat actors do it. There's no secret tool behind it, right? That's the way it's done. The SonicWall Security Bulletin has assigned a CVE 2024-53704 with an 8.2 CVSS rating. It impacts multiple Generation 6 and Generation 7 firewalls that are running 6.5.4.15-11.7n and older, and 7.0.1-5161 and older versions. So all of those from there. So again, multiple CVEs there as well, with other low severity ratings as well, like low severity CVEs across different SonicWall products. So you want to make sure you get those addressed as soon as humanly possible. The Green Bay Packers, their fans are known as cheeseheads. Yes, that's a thing. That's a thing. Their online Packers Pro Shop website last week fell victim to a cyber attack with a payment skimming technique, essentially where over 8,514 cheeseheads were affected from the payment skimming attack. By the way, for those who don't know, the Green Bay Packers, in terms of teams in the National Football League, is the only team that's owned by the people and not by a whole bunch of rich owners. So there's that for the Green Bay Packers. An analysis from Sansac, a Dutch e-commerce security company, notified Green Bay about the attack, and threat actors abused a JSNOP callback and a YouTube's embed feature, which allowed the users to embed content from one website into another. Ultimately, the skimmers were able to bypass the content security policy and for the Pro Shop website, and a script was injected. That script harvests data from input, select, and text area fields on the site, exfiltrating the captured information, including payment information. And it's kind of like a MagCart type of attack. We've talked about them on the show previously. So the Green Bay Packers having to deal with this breach as well. A Russian ISP in St. Petersburg has been completely taken offline and their infrastructure completely destroyed. That is being done as part of the Ukraine hacktivist, the Ukrainian Cyber Alliance Group, announcing that they breached ISP Nodox's network and wiped systems after stealing sensitive documents. Nodox, for their end, said that the essentially their entire network was taken offline. Screenshots, kind of as you see this right here, shows the network connectivity, and then all of a sudden, when the attack was launched just after midnight, everything just went flat. Absolutely flat. They killed the entire ISP. So the ISP sent out a note to its customers saying, "Dear subscribers, last night an attack was carried out on our infrastructure, presumably from the Ukraine. The network has been destroyed. We're restoring it from backups. There's no timelines or forecast at the moment. Our first priority is to first restore telephony and the call center. Internet monitoring, obviously you see that there. The Ukrainian Cyber Alliance has been active since at least 2016, really trying to help Ukraine deal with the cyber threats coming from Russia. But this is an escalation of sorts by these Ukrainian attackers. And by the way, it opens the door. It opens the door there as well. Speaking of more nation-state geopolitical cybersecurity issues, Japan on Wednesday linked more than 200 different cyber attacks over the last 5 years, targeting the country's national security and high technology data to a Chinese hacking group they call MirrorFace. They're detailing their tactics and calling on government agencies and businesses to reinforce preventative measures. The targets of the Chinese government-led cyber attacks included Japan's foreign and defense ministries, the country's space agency, and individuals, including politicians, journalists, private companies, and think tanks related to advanced technology. And again, China doesn't have a lot of innovation. China's main economy derives from manufacturing and cheap labor. And so in order for them to keep up with the world, they do have to steal a whole bunch of IP. They do that to the US, they do it to Europe, and obviously they do it to Japan. Japan is now publicly calling them out. They're sharing the TTPs and IOCs. They're saying one tactic, the attackers targeted Japanese organization in areas of aerospace, semiconductors, information, and communications from February to October of 2023 by exploiting vulnerabilities in VPNs to gain unauthorized access to information. The attack included the one we talked about here on the show, Japan's Aerospace and Exploration Agency, which acknowledged in June of last year that it had suffered a series of cyber attacks since 2023. Last year, a cyber attack paralyzed operations at a container terminal at the port in the city of Nagoya for 3 days, and Japan Airlines were hit with a cyber attack on Christmas Day that paralyzed them as well. And now for all you watching, Jaime Blasco, the CTO and co-founder of Nudge Security, joined me yesterday to talk a little bit about what's going on with the Cyberhaven breach and what y'all need to know that can help you build resiliency. Here's that conversation. All right, folks. Joining me on today's special segment is my good friend Jaime Blasco, CTO and co-founder over at Nudge Security. Jaime, welcome to the program. I hope you're doing well.
Thank you, James. Yeah, nice to see you again.
Thanks to have you here. We're talking about the Cyberhaven incident that you apparently don't have a life on Christmas Day, and you just kind of started tweeting about it. I was following you on Twitter as you were kind of going through the incident. It's kind of disappeared a little bit, but I don't think it should disappear. It's significant. It took place. They've tried to downplay it. I don't believe it. For our audience who haven't heard about the Cyberhaven incident that happened on Christmas Day, Jaime, why don't you give everyone a little bit of background on what happened on December 25th?
Yeah, definitely. So I saw a tweet from Cyberhaven kind of giving an update that their Chrome extension, like those browser extensions that you install in your browsers. So apparently a malicious update had happened and they got it pretty quickly, and kudos to them to do it during Christmas Day when the security teams are all on vacation, and they had the means to actually find out pretty quickly, and they did a pretty decent job, to be honest, just like handling the incident, communicating with customers. But long story short, they got a spear phishing email from an email that looked that it was coming from the Google Chrome store, asking, the email address that it's public because it's in your Chrome store, page. They send that spear phishing email there. Obviously, when you see that email, it was pretty well crafted, kind of like, hey, click here, to review the privacy policy, blah, blah, blah. That opened an OAuth grant consent screen that, if the developer accepted that grant, it would grant access to the attacker to basically interact with the Chrome web store. So the developer did it. It clicked on the consent, and we talk about those OAuth grants and how dangerous they are in previous episodes. But basically, the attacker pretty quickly used that access to modify the Chrome extension from Cyberhaven and add code that was able to collect cookies, credentials from, in this case, Facebook business, but potentially it could have collected cookies and access tokens from pretty much any application in the browser that you interact in the browser.
Yeah, so it kind of led to a whole broader discussion around mitigation. Now, for everyone listening and watching, what kind of mitigation would you expect to be done when a browser extension challenge or incident like this happens?
Yeah, it started with the visibility. Like most people, most companies we talk to, they don't even have the ability to list all the extensions that they either manage or their employees have installed in every type of browser out there, because it's not just Chrome, right? You can install extensions in Firefox, in Edge. So you're going to have managed extensions. And in the case of Cyberhaven, it wasn't like, an employee installed that extension. This was something that the company had bought, and it has deployed through, the MDM or similar tools. So this is a little bit tricky because it was an auto update that happened. So this is more from a supply chain perspective, right? How you're handling, those vendors. And obviously, this incident was all about how do you respond quick response of access that extension had during that period of time, and do an incident, response to basically invalidate all the credentials that have gone through those browsers that had that version during the period that it was compromised. So it was very challenging, and many security teams had a few days of sweating, because this was a pretty unique scenario.
Yeah, well, this unique scenario leads to a greater, broader discussion around managing browser extensions kind of as a security program, and kind of the cyber risks that exist with it. What are some of the best practices to do just that?
Yeah, so for Chrome in particular, since it's the one we are talking about here, unless you are using the Chrome enterprise browser offering, there isn't a lot you can do. Once you have that enterprise subscription, you can basically do the same that you do with OAuth grants, where you can say, hey, I don't allow my employees to install browser extensions, I have to approve them, or here is a list of browser extensions that I approve for you. Now, that being said, this wouldn't have fixed the issue with Cyberhaven, because remember, Cyberhaven is something that is in my supply chain. I have done a security review and I install in all my endpoints. So again, there isn't a lot you can do for this particular scenario besides being able to respond quickly, in the sense of like as soon as you know about this Cyberhaven incident, being able to uninstall that extension as quickly as possible from all your endpoints. And again, that comes to having that visibility and having the ability to uninstall extensions at scale. That many people still struggle with that. Now, for other scenarios, you could have a system that basically does risk scoring of those extensions and the updates as well. Right. In this case, a system that scores changes in those extensions will have been able to find these things. And it's something that Google, whenever you submit a new update to the Google Chrome store, Google is doing those reviews. Obviously, they didn't catch this one, but there are other companies that have the ability to give you more detailed risk scores about those updates and those extensions. So you can automate, things like, hey, if there's an update on an extension that introduces some level of risk, I may be able to respond that in real time. But again, this is an extremely challenging scenario, because that was a security company that was, the extension belonged to a security company. So there is a level of trust that you already have on that company.
Absolutely. And that kind of highlights the fact that your security vendors are still vendors and need to be treated just the same as you would treat a non-security vendor. Jaime, thank you so much for coming on the show today, folks. Jaime Blasco, CTO, co-founder over at Nudge Security. You can check out more at nudgesecurity.com/CyberHub for a lot more details there with our friends over at Nudge. Thank you, Jaime, so much, everyone. Thank you. We'll go back to the show here in just a moment. All right, folks. So I hope you enjoyed that segment with my good friend Jaime Blasco talking about Cyberhaven, because that's really big. And obviously, Cyberhaven's got they're working on their transparency. Obviously, this hasn't been updated in a week. Just it takes time to get forensics. It takes time to get explanation. So we'll give it, but I'm monitoring this page, and y'all could do the same by just going to their website and seeing it there. Let's wrap up to this morning's show with Cyber Command finally getting Austin's approval for an overhaul. But here's the thing. He's giving an overhaul when in Congress, right? And this is one of the challenges whenever people talk about like kind of private-public partnership or anything like that, kind of the overhaul of what Congress, who has the power of the purse, who's obviously considering launching a study to establish a seventh branch of the military called the Cyber Force, as they believe the way cyber is kind of done in the military today isn't effective. The fact that the Navy has its own force, Army, the Marine Corps, Air Force, Coast Guard, and so forth, they kind of all have their own kind of cyber force with different requirements for each branch of how to join their cyber force. It isn't an advantage per se. And so there's a study that's being launched. So outgoing Secretary of Defense Austin, who was behind the Afghanistan withdrawal, by the way. So, there's that to his record that he'll never be able to live up or down to, has approved something a month before leaving office when he knows that incoming SecDef Pete Hegseth may have different priorities. And typically, in the transition period, stuff isn't done. Either way, he did it. But then lawmakers are also reviving the attempts for the Cyberforce study in order to try to create the seventh branch of the military that is Cyberforce. So we've got, the Army, the Marine Corps, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, Space Force, and the seventh would be Cyber Force. So we'll see. Obviously, we're 11 days away from the inauguration of the Trump administration, and then obviously the Senate will confirm the nominees. It looks like Pete Hegseth at SecDef does have enough votes to get his nomination through the Senate and will be the next Secretary of Defense for our country. And he's got a whole different view around cyber. And obviously with Mike Walls as the National Security Advisor, he's got cyber and space at the top of his priorities from a national security perspective. So that'll be very, very interesting as well. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back on Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Y'all have a great weekend. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.